Hello there, BookTube. My name is Daniel. Welcome back to my channel, Guilty Feet. You know how to whistle, don't you? Just put your lips together and blow. I've got no rhythm. And today I want to do some more It Books, Forgotten It Books. I did a video last week of 5 It Books, and then someone in the comments mentioned a couple of others. I thought, well, I'll just do some more because I've got a whole bunch of books that I read because they were It Books, and these were always, all of these, I've got 6 here, 2 non-fiction, 4 fiction. I think almost all of them were made into films, except one of them. So they were zeitgeisty enough that they got picked up and made in, someone spent tens of millions of dollars making them into a movie. And a couple of cases, at least one Oscar-winning movie, a couple of Oscar-nominated movies. So these were big noise in their time. I think most of these now are from the late 90s, early 2000s. So utterly forgotten, unremarked upon by BookTube, as far as I can tell. I don't think anyone really talks about any of these books right now, but I'm going to. So if you've read them, let me know. If you've ever heard these books, but before your time as a reader, and you think, oh yeah, I think I've heard of that, or wasn't that a movie? I may tell you these were big books. I don't think anyone's reading them. I don't know if they're still in print. Probably some of these at least must still be in print, but I think they peaked and they're well past the height of their success and prestige. Let's start with one of them. This was made into a movie for which Renee Zellweger won her first of 2 Oscars. I think it was in a Best Supporting Role. I'm talking, of course, about Cold Mountain by Charles Fraser. Hard to overestimate just as can you see the cover? Not very well, it's because it's metallic and it's faded a bit from the sun. Hard to overestimate just how huge Cold Mountain was. It's about a character called Inman who's finding his way back home during the American Civil War, and about the people left farming his homestead while he's away at war and the effort required to get him home. And he's kind of a superhero in that he just manages to fight off everyone and survive everything and get home. This was on that cusp of literary fiction and popular fiction. So just really widely read on the front table of every single bookshop. Circa, when did I read this? Let's see, 1 second, when did this book come out? I think sort of 97, 98, if that makes sense. I got a paperback version in the UK, first published in the US in 97. And this paperback version 98. So right at the end of the last century, this book was everywhere. And I remember reading it and thinking it was really? I mean, it was just a bit too neat, and this invincible hero, and everyone was just sort of the best version of humanity. And I didn't really take it very seriously. But huge book. As I say, Renee Zellweger won an Oscar. I think Jude Law plays Inman. Is Nicole Kidman the other female lead? Anyway, Cold Mountain by Charles Fraser. Did you ever read it? Did you read it back in the day? Has anyone read this in the last 10 years? Like anyone on the planet read this in the last 10 years? I'm thinking no. Next up, another book made into a movie. This was smaller. This was equally popular. I'm talking about Snow Falling on Cedars by David Goodison. This was made into a movie with Ethan Hawke, I think, playing the lead character, who I believe is a one-armed fisherman, if I remember correctly. And listen to this on the back. So again, I bought this in February 97, and this was published in the States in 94, 95. So this has been around when I got to it. Again, I'd probably seen it on the table in front of a shop. On the back it says, if Truman Capote, Arthur Miller, Harper Lee and John Grisham all washed up on a desert island together, they might well come up with something like this. I mean, they're really trying to dump as many names into that as possible, but it's on a remote island. There's a murder trial, so that's the link to Harper Lee, I guess, and characters on the margins. I think this is, when is it set? After the war. And there's a Japanese American on the island, and I seem to remember that the lead guy has one arm, but I don't remember. And finding out who done it and people's prejudices. I guess there is the hint of To Kill a Mockingbird in there. Again, this was okay. I think the movie disappeared without a trace. But there was a time where everyone was reading Snow Falling on Cedars, and so I picked it up and read it. What else have I got here? Okay, bit of non-fiction for you. This again, early in my reading career. So this is actually what I was doing. This is 93. Reveal what the book is. I read this in June 93. First published in Great Britain in 1991. So that again, I would have picked this up because I would have walked into Waterstones on my way home from work. I think I got off the tube at Hampstead and walked into Waterstones at Hampstead, and this would have been on one of the front tables there. Massive, massive a book that I then remember reading on the tube. In the old days, before we had mobile phones to distract us, I used to read. Maybe pick up a newspaper and read that on the way into work, or I would read a book. 40 minutes into work at the beginning of the day, 40 minutes home from work at the end of the day. That's really what made me into a reader, because I was reading every single day. At time dedicated just reading. I would take a book and have a little bag with me with work stuff, and every day there'd be a novel or a book, or this was quite a chunky one. What am I talking about? Wild Swans by Yung Chang. Massive, massive seller. Probably sold millions in the US and the UK. Three Daughters of China. I think this has been reprinted and still, as a key work on China, key work on this sort of personal biography, autobiography, or the biography of one's family. Something that's been imitated a million times ever since. And I just noticed, the reason I put this in the thing, because I think this is probably, out of all the books, perhaps the most widely read, maybe not, probably not. But I just saw that Yung Chang is publishing this year a sequel. So this goes up to, I say, the late 70s, and it's about her life and her parents' life and the Cultural Revolution and Mao and what it was like being in China and informing on your parents. Parts of this stayed with me. This is 30 years since I read this, more than 30 years since I read this, and some of it has stayed with me. It says in the bio here, she was born in 1952 and left China for Britain in 1978. I think the book goes up to 1978. So the new book, which I've not seen on anyone's anticipated books of 2025 list, it showed up in one place, and I hadn't heard anything about it until then. But there is a sequel, Fly Wild Swans. I think it's called something cheesy like that. Again, I'm not sure how desperate I am to pick it up, but this was so huge. I'm amazed that no one is talking about the sequel. I think it sold 1 million copies. I could be completely wrong, but it was massive, massive. I'm guessing out of all the books I'm showing here, this is one that more people have read. But prove me wrong. Have you read Wild Swans? Did you read it 30 years ago, or have you read it at some point in the last 10 or 15 years? Wild Swans by Yung Chang, I think a kind of forgotten it book. What else have I got? A book in translation, a novel that again was on that front table, up there with Snow Falling on Cedars, Cold Lantern. This came out in, in Denmark in 1992. First published in Britain in 1993. I bought mine in 1995. That's no, 1996. Oh, okay. Anyway, funny story about that. So I'm talking about Mr. Miller's Feeling for Snow by Peter Hoeg. This was translated from the Danish into English by F. David. That's all we know about this fellow. And this was a book. Miss Smilla is a Danish librarian, maybe, Smilla Jaspersen, and she finds a boy dead in the snow and drives the police mad. She's a young woman. This is not an old busybody Miss Marple type, but something about the abandonment of this boy in the snow bothers her, and she tracks it down and tries to discover what's happened and pushes the police and uncovers corruption and lots of good stuff like that. Made into a movie which disappeared without a trace, I believe, starring the great Julia Ormond. I say great because she was, I think, she is an amazing screen presence whose career sort of peaked and troughed very, very quickly. She had a couple of big hits, Legends of the Fall, and then Sidney Pollack used it in the remake of Sabrina, which disappeared without a trace, and then pretty soon she was gone from Hollywood. The last thing I saw her in was playing Temple Grandin's mother in the movie Temple Grandin with Claire Danes as Temple Grandin, the great, how would you describe veterinary biologist? No, I don't know what humanist. I can't remember what the correct term for her profession is, but an amazing human being. And in that movie, I think it was a TV movie originally, that Julie Ormond plays her mother. But I haven't heard much about Julie Ormond since. Anyway, that's that. I also saw they've just remade this as a mini-series, literally in 2025, but doesn't in Australia, and doesn't seem to have had wide release. It doesn't seem to be on any of my streaming platforms. I'm not sure. I don't think I watched the Julie Ormond movie, though I like Julie Ormond. So I probably wouldn't go and track that down either. But the book was jolly good. Now, here's the story about this book. I bought this in London the week before we emigrated. We came to Israel in January '96, so going on 30 years, and I bought this. You can see here it says 12.95. So I bought this December 1995, just before we moved to Israel, and I would have read it that year when we landed in the first few months that we were living in Israel. I didn't have all my stuff yet. It's just me and my wife and a young baby, and we were living in an absorption centre for new immigrants. Now, you will also see that as well as my name and the date, it has here a red sticker, and you can barely see there's a stamp there of a second-hand bookshop which has long disappeared. And the reason for that is I lent this book to somebody. We were all in this absorption centre, lots of families, immigrants from all over the world, a lot, but we tended to gravitate towards the Anglos, the Americans, and the English, very not. Everybody had books with them. I'd brought books with me, and I read them while I was there. But nobody had all their stuff because everyone was waiting to move out, move into an apartment, and then they would bring over everything they ever owned from abroad. And I lent this to somebody while I was there, and then they moved on, and I never got the book back. I like to keep all my books. It was a little disappointing, but I wasn't going to chase someone down for a book. It's happened before. I've lent books out and they haven't come back. Then, several months later, we had also moved out. And there was a second-hand bookshop in the neighbourhood that I would occasionally drift into and have a look and see what they had. And I walked in there and saw this copy of a book. I said, "Oh, that's the exact same copy that I had that I lent to that person who never got it back." And opened it up and found my name inside it. Took it to the front counter, paid for it, and walked home with it. So I bought this book twice, just to have my copy with my name in it back in my library. Now, the end of this story is that the person I lent it to, I now see on a fairly regular basis. We're not family friends, whatever, but she lives in the neighbourhood, and I see her occasionally, and I see her husband, and we're friendly, and etc. I will never, to my dying day, I will never tell her this story. I don't think she'll watch this. I don't think even, let's say she watched this, she will probably not remember this was her, because I'm talking now 30 years ago. But I know exactly who it was. I don't bear any grudges at all. But this is the book in my collection I bought twice. Miss Smilla's Feeling for Snow. Has anyone read this? Did you read this 30 plus years ago? Have you read this in the last 10 years? I don't know if it's even in print, if anyone remembers it. But in a time where we value books in translation, female books in translation, this was in the early part of my reading career, a book translated from Danish by a male author. Sorry, this is not a female author. It's about a woman. Okay, Peter Herc is not a female author, but a book in translation at least. Anyone read Miss Miller's Feeling for Snow? I think in America it might have had a slightly different title. The title might have been translated slightly differently. I'm not sure. I think I've seen it a little bit differently, but I could be misremembering that. Anyway, anyone read that? I did. What else have I got? This is a book that was humongous, bigger in America certainly than in England. I believe in America it stayed in hardback for years. It was on the hardback bestsellers list for years, and they did not print a paperback version of this for years because it was still selling in hardback. In the UK, I'm not sure it was ever printed in hardback, and it might have gone straight into paperback. A fantastic read. Everyone who read this book loved it. They made it into a movie with a whole bunch of famous people. Kevin Spacey, back when he was still famous. A fairly big budget movie, which then didn't do all that great. What am I talking about? Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil by John Berendt. A massive hit book. I read this. I bought this in August '95. So the year before I moved to Israel. So again, I would have read this on the tube going to work in London. And this was just, some great stories. I still remember some of the characters in this book, a voodoo queen and all sorts of intrigue and illicit love affairs and crazy times in the town of Savannah in Georgia. And maybe I've never been to Savannah, Georgia, but having read this 30 years ago now, 30 years ago this year, I still want to go to Savannah, Georgia, because it makes it sound so exotic and weird and wonderful and crazy, and a mix of cultures and sort of the old world and the new world and then the Creole world. And it stayed with me. Does anyone still read Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil? Maybe the movie probably has more currency than the book, even though it wasn't a huge hit. It was a big, long movie. But this was on every table in every bookshop, bestseller for years. Does anyone still read this? Did you read it back in the day? Would you ever pick it up? And then the last book also came out of nowhere, massive hit, probably bigger in America than in the UK. And I bought this. I was already in Israel. This book first came out in 1993 in the UK. Yeah, that's interesting. Previously published in Great Britain in 1992 as Love in Black and White without illustrations, because this book has lots of pictures in it. What am I talking about? The Bridges of Madison County by Robert James Waller. A massive, massive best-selling, trite little love story, 160 pages, sold gazillions, especially in the States, made into a movie with directed by Clint Eastwood, starring, I got that right? Clint Eastwood and Meryl Streep. To me, this is my go-to answer to the question, name a movie that was better than the book. Is it Steve Donahue who claims that all movies are better than books? I'm not sure of that, but I'm sorry if I misappropriated, attributed. God in heaven. But yeah, to me, in most cases, the book is better than the movie. But in this case, the book is so rubbish, and the movie is quite good, and sexy, and interesting, and just a whole different. The lighting is better than it ever is portrayed in the book. A silly little novel which I read back in the day because it was huge. Everyone was reading it, and I picked up, and it took me 2 hours to read this, if even that. Is it still in print? Is anyone reading The Bridges of Madison County? And I think in a lot of instances, a lot of the books that I mentioned, the authors didn't do much after these. We had that in the last round with Ellen Oliphant, where the author still failed to produce a follow-up. I think there were follow-ups to Madison County, follow-up to Cold Mountain. I think even David Goodson has published since, but not a whole lot. John Berendt, I have no idea if he's ever published another book since Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. None of them ever had another splash, the size and the impact that these It books had. These were definite It books. The Bridges of Madison County, probably the least of the 6 that I've today. But here, I'll put them all on camera, and you can tell me ready to these, if you remember them being a thing. Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, Miss Smilla's Feeling the Snow, Wild Swans, Snow Falling on Cedars, Cold Mountain, and The Bridges of Madison County. it books of yesteryear, gone, mostly forgotten. I read them all, remember fair things about them, and that's what I'm here to tell you. God bless, bye.